Okay, perfect. So we have our warning. This is looking good so far. What do we need next? We need the control to get this layer to show up. Right now, we have those navigation buttons that are bringing up our other layers, but we have nothing bringing up this one. So that's what we need to work on next. We actually need to start adding the control functions to get that logic through and get everything working properly. So I will add, or I will search for control fun. Again, I'll bring in my control function. We need to make sure of a few things. Let's think about this. Now, if the USB is connected and they're on the camera layer, they should just go to the camera layer. That's going to use a logic AND, right? I said if this and this happens, so forth. So we know we need a logic AND. I'll give myself 2 inputs for that one. And I'll need a second one here, because the second part of this is actually if the USB is not connected. If the USB is not connected and they're somewhere else. So we still need that logic AND, but we need one more now. We need the logic NOT. So I'll just copy and paste and then change this to a logic NOT. So we need the connection of the USB. We're going to pull that from the emulator. I can find that with the connected USB connected from. Perfect. And then what are we looking at? If the USB is connected and they've selected that camera layer, right? Well, we'll pull that from the selector. So I'm going to go ahead, and I know that that selection is selector 2. That's the one that's connected to the camera layer. So I'm actually going to just get rid of that connection right now and replace it with select camera. I'll send that right here. So if they have connected their USB and they've selected the camera layer, then they should just go to the camera layer. Well, then I'll pull that from the UCI layer controller, and I'll say this one is my layer camera. And I will put that right here. Perfect. That part is taken care of so far. Now, to handle the not portion, the USB not being connected, right? So I'll send that same USB connected from to the logic NOT, and I'm going to connect that first pin of the logic AND to that logic NOT output. And now we're still looking at the selection of the camera layer. If the USB is not connected and they've selected the camera layer, then it needs to go to that new layer, right? So I'm still going to use the select camera here, and then, well, I need to expose the new layer in my UCI layer controller. So I will head over to the properties there, and there it is, connect USB, show. All right. And sticking with my naming format, I will say layer USB connect. All right. Now that's almost everything, right? There's still something missing here. We want to make sure that the moment that the user connects that USB, if they're not on the camera layer, we want it to automatically take them to that camera layer. That's going to be some pretty nice automation for them. So we can do that here by just sending that connection directly into the selector, which is then selecting that navigation button of the camera layer and bringing up the camera layer. Perfect. So USB connected from into selector 2, and this should be everything.
But wait, you might be wondering, hasn't that just created a problem for us? Remembering what we know about control pins and control wires, right now, what would happen when the user disconnects the USB cable? Based on what we know previously, that would make the selector here turn false, right? Because the incoming LED has turned false. That upstream control will control the selector and send a false here. Wouldn't that then transfer forward to our logic AND? And since the second input would be false, the two conditions of our logic AND would not both be true, resulting in a false output of our logic AND, which would then turn off our UCI layer. Wouldn't this mean that our UCI now is navigated to no layers whatsoever and we're just looking at a blank screen? Is that the behavior that we want? No, we don't want that. What's happening here? Well, a couple things to think about. First thing to think about is that in this case, that won't happen. Why? Well, you may remember that the selector buttons are interlocking, right? Not only does that mean that when you press one, the other ones turn off, it also means that you can't turn a button off by clicking it again. Think about the radio buttons in your car. You can't turn off the station that you're on by pressing that same button again, right? That doesn't work. You have to press some other button. Same is true here for the selector. So getting that false coming in on selector 2 will actually not turn off the selector at all. But what's cool is that because that is still an upstream event, that false does come through here on the logic not. It causes the logic not to reevaluate and output a true, because when its input is not true, the logic not condition is that it will output a true. That goes into this second logic and, so now both of this second logic and's conditions are true, causing this second logic and to output a true, which will then activate our connect USB layer. Ring-a-ding-ding, plug in the thing, right? So what's cool about this is that we didn't have to add any logic at all to satisfy that second condition from our original scope of work, right? Where we said, hey, if they're on this page and they disconnect the USB, we want that warning to show up again. That will happen automatically right here. And then the fourth point that we had about where if they disconnect the USB but they're not on the camera tab already, we want nothing to happen. That's also already covered, because guess what? If they're not on the selected camera navigation, then neither of these logic ands can possibly resolve to true, because their second inputs will always be false, because that selector 2 will be off. So we really have covered all 4 of these conditions really quite simply with just a couple of control components. And it works, right?
Let's find out. All right, so we're back at our UCI. I'm going to split the screen so we can see both of them, both the emulator and the one that we're building right now. Let's see if this is working right. Now, I'm on the displays control of my UCI that I'm building out. And in the emulator, we don't have the USB connected just yet. So I'm going to go ahead and connect that. If I do, it should take me directly to the camera layer. Perfect, that works. Now, if I disconnect it, it's showing me that warning layer, right? It's saying, hey, please connect the USB. So they know they need to do that. That's working perfectly as well. Awesome. One other thing I do want to point out, this is a great time to kind of show how it works, is remember those transition animations that are built into the UCI layer controller? Let's actually put some of those into use here. I have my new layer. Actually, I don't have any set up, so I'm going to go ahead and select fade for all of them. I really like that. And let's see how that looks now. We're on a different layer. Look at that fade. Awesome. If I hit connect USB, it fades into the camera controls. If I disconnect it, all right, it's now showing me that warning layer. Perfect. It works exactly how I wanted it to. So we were able to successfully complete that first exercise. We have our first major bit of control in our UCI. So now we're going to move on to the next pieces that we need to control with the video distribution. So we'll do that in the next video. I'll see you there.